Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into today's episode of the Money Insights Podcast. I am your host, Christian Allen, with my co-host. You know him as The Pod. Just the pod.
Just the pod now. All right.
The pod. Yeah, once you get to like a certain status level, you don't have to say the whole thing. You're just the pod. What do you think?
I'll take it. I roll with your lead on these things for sure.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Rod the Pod is with us, and we are excited to hang out with you guys today. We're going to tackle a subject that we've never really tackled here on the Money Insights Podcast. And it's interesting as I think about it, because when I think about our clientele, like there is a deep connection between the topic that we're going to hit on, like between money and the topic that we're going to hit on with it.
Sure.
And we have a lot, like we know, and like have clients and partners and a lot of people who really care about the subject. So anyway, we're going to tackle it with the caveat that on at least half of it, we don't pretend to be the experts, but I will say this. I think we're as good as anyone at being able to kind of see how the intersection of those things work.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'll introduce the pod. Today, we're talking about the intersection of health and wealth. What do you think?
Yeah, I am excited about this. So Christian came up with it as usual. He typically will, sometimes we brainstorm together, but really Christian puts together our outlines. I get a chance to review it ahead of time, and I'm really excited.
Okay, this will be a good one. And like you said, when we were kind of doing our prep stuff, we know a lot of people who are really like deeply passionate about this subject. In fact,
yes.
Buck does a podcast that was basically about this entire topic. And as I was getting ready, I was thinking like, gosh, maybe it would have been a good idea to invite one of our clients on who is an expert on the health side. But we're going to talk about kind of the philosophy and the intersection. And then, there can always be a follow-up episode. We'll bring somebody else on. But let's do this. Okay, so here's the thing. This is what stands out to me. Here, I'm going to start with this. Money doesn't buy happiness. Can we all agree money doesn't buy happiness?
Yeah.
However, money does relieve a lot of kind of challenges and pains in life that we might otherwise have to go through. Is that fair to say?
For sure, yeah. Okay,
so I think about, I've mentioned that we're building a secondary brand, Money Insights for Kids. We're really excited about. We'll talk more about and launch that here in the next few months. But I think about the people like let's just say that your young people specifically, they don't know a lot about money. They get into like their early years, they end up in debt and it like that stress and anxiety can literally plague your entire life, not just from like a mental standpoint, like an emotional standpoint, but it can absolutely do the same thing from a physical standpoint because the two are so interrelated. Yeah. So in my mind, it's just like a really important thing, not just from hey, I want to be able to buy nice things and, live a luxurious life. Like it's also just healthier, right? It's literally going to statistic for everyone to promote this kind of, to support this idea. The Journal of the American Medical Association found that the wealthiest 1% of Americans live nearly 15 years longer than the poorest. Now, I realize that on an individual basis, like this can vary, but as a whole, like that's pretty telling, right? Yeah. People who have resources, and I would say also people who have the habits of oftentimes the people who are like the most successful and have the most money, like oftentimes it's the combination of resources and habits that give them this opportunity to live a longer, healthier life, right? So again, it's not just like a practical idea, like it's not just like this pie in the sky idea. It's like very practical,
right?
It'll literally help us live longer. So for that reason, I thought this is a topic that we should at least tackle. Now, as we go through it, we're gonna kind of take a couple of different angles on this. I should probably mention this before we get into it, because at first we're gonna talk really about kind of the why behind why having money, having resources, and some of these things are obvious, but we're talking about why those things can help us live longer, healthier lives. But we're also going to kind of switch gears and just talk about like opportunities and our thoughts around investing in health and wellness. And then we'll maybe have some fun at the end and talk about like high profile people who have made health and wellness a really massive priority. And of course, some of us, we'll all know who those people are when we get there. Okay.
And can I hit one more thing on that to frame it? Please. We're going to go the other direction as well and talk about how a focus on your health and wellness facilitates your ability to create wealth, right?
Absolutely. That's a critical and important point. So like, I think about my own life, and I've been through, like highs and lows in terms of how my own health, and I've had health challenges, nothing like life-threatening serious, but things that have made my quality of life challenging and stuff like that. I have like some chronic pain issues and things like that. And I just look at the times in my life where I'm like been the most productive, and without question, I can be more productive when I'm healthy and doing a lot of those like really important things, exercising and sleeping and, eating well. All of those things have just a massive impact. In fact, over the last few years, I've become a lot more focused on those things. And it's like literally had an impact just on my overall anxiety and things like that. So anyway, your point is 100% true that not only does having money help us live longer, healthier lives on average, but living healthy habits also allows us to create wealth in a more impactful way, more prolific way. Okay, so let's jump into it, Rod. And I'm going to let you kind of hit on some of these. What are some of the financial benefits that come from prioritizing wellness?
Yeah, well, the first one we're going to talk about is that with that focus, you have lower healthcare costs. Specifically, what I mean is somebody who focuses on a healthy lifestyle and preventive care is going to head off any of those issues that just become really can be devastating from a wealth standpoint, right? So someone could be doing really well financially, maybe even have insurance to cover, any health issues that may come up. But when they get hit with things, number one, there are deductibles, there are other costs, but there are the ancillary things as well, right? If I have to travel to get my care, if I have these other things happening, then all of a sudden I can run up bills outside of my health insurance, even if I have a really robust plan there. But then that can obviously be devastating to my ability to just build wealth and or keep what I've built.
Yeah. And I think the statistic is that I don't even know. I don't remember. I read it recently, but there is a large percentage of the bankruptcies, like people who are going bankrupt in America, that is specifically due to healthcare costs or specifically related to overall wellness and healthcare costs. And a great portion of those people actually had health insurance. Yep. So I'm trying to remember. I feel like I had a stat on that here somewhere too. But anyway, so one of the cool, crazy things is that, to your point, a lot of the people who were having the health issues end up going bankrupt were the people who actually had health insurance, right? Yep. So you have to be doing more and be prepared above and beyond that is kind of the point. Rod, have you heard about those like cool advanced screening things? Like you can pay $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. And again, I realize not everybody can do this. So like I'm trying to be sensitive, but like the technology that's becoming available to help people live longer, healthier lives is just wild. Right. And right. Again, I know like just very surface level, but I've heard about and, talked to people who have done like these really advanced like cancer screenings and things like that can just like give them insights that, you of course couldn't get even a few years ago. And so the opportunity to like live longer and healthier lives is certainly at our fingertips. But my other point in just suggesting that is that like, especially early on, especially at this stage, maybe always, it's expensive, right? I was just going to say like, maybe it'll go down in price over time, but everything that we've seen suggests that healthcare is just always expensive. Right. So anyway, it's just an interesting thing, but I feel like I got to do one of those things. Would you do one of those?
Yeah. Well, and the things that I've heard about it, they're looking at you like physically, like who you are right now, but also looks at your genetics. Yes. Because obviously a lot of what would make us predisposed toward certain things, diabetes, health or heart issues, whatever, a lot of that comes from genetics. But if you can identify those things and make adjustments in your lifestyle, the way that you go about exercise, eating supplements, whatever, can be tweaked to help hit those things head on. And then obviously that makes a huge difference as it relates to your body's predisposition towards those things.
Yep. It's an interesting, it's just really interesting. So my thought was, I keep thinking to myself, and I tend to procrastinate things like this, but for the last probably 6 months, I've been like, I really need to like look into it further and do something like that. So that, my dad died at 49 from pancreatic cancer. So I don't have like a lot of cancer in my family that I know of, but my dad certainly fits that bill. So anyway, and I know that life insurance companies dislike it enough to give you a rating knockdown when your parents pass away before 50. So there must be something to it. Anyway, my point is just to say one of the many benefits to having resources, to being able to save and invest and build wealth and have financial freedom, is that you can do things like that might not be accessible to everybody, but gives you an opportunity to like live a longer, healthier life, which is obviously really cool. Okay. So talked about lower healthcare costs, talked about kind of preventative healthcare. And then we talked about this briefly, but maybe give us, I think, love to hear your take on this idea of increased productivity and longevity.
Yeah. And this one, I think, is it's really useful kind of looking back, right, to our grandparents or our great grandparents and their longevity, and especially as it relates to just their access to food, right? And not only just the quantities, but the quality that we have, right? We can go down to the supermarket and get things that, our great grandparents, maybe they heard about, right? Oh, I've heard of whatever, like people living in Utah. I've heard of oranges. I've heard of bananas, but to us now, it's just like, well, yeah, I know what a banana was when I was 2 years old, but that's relatively new. And my point is just to say that there are a lot of things that have led to our generation living longer lives compared to previous generations. But that's a huge part of it, is the quality and quantity of the food, because we're also, I'm going to say bigger. Obviously there's the obesity side of it, which takes it to the extreme, but we're taller, right? We're more, just more healthy generally than a lot of our, ancestors because of just that, right? We don't have to worry about as much the famine or did I store enough food from the last season to tide me over to the next season? And if not, then we're living off of very little. So I think that makes a huge difference.
Well, anything. And then of course, in the last 20 years, it feels like there's been like a healthy living revolution where there's like health food stores and organic food and all of these things. And there's huge investment in these things too, right? There's like, this is a place that people, for good reason. Like is there anything like more worth investing in than, your own health, right? Like it's hard. And the other thing that we didn't probably talk about, maybe I'll just hit on before we kind of move topics, is like healthiness, having health and wealth, especially when those two things can align. Like I am convinced that one or the other doesn't necessarily, well, I shouldn't say that. Money doesn't buy happiness, but when you can combine having really good health and having money, man, that just feels like that's pretty darn nice. You're literally improving your opportunity to experience joy and happiness in your life. You know what I mean? And so like, what's more valuable than that? And when I think about investing, I'm like, gosh, like, yes, I can build up my bank account. I can build up my real estate portfolio. But if I don't have like a healthy life and I can't enjoy life, I can't live happily because of my health issues, then like, what am I doing? You know, is it really worth it? I'll give you an example of, now I'm not saying this person didn't live a really great life. He absolutely did. But I also hear the story, I think about the story, and it's kind of sad because from everything people have said post-death, he just didn't prioritize his health. And that is the former owner of the Utah Jazz, Larry H. Miller, right? Larry H. Miller, I think he died at like age 66, and he had owned and invested in the Jazz and, you know, had a really strong like influence in the community. He apparently was just like a like compulsive worker. He just worked and he worked and he worked, and he just like couldn't get away from that. And he was ultra competitive. And so like his wife, who took over the team after, right, she has said like inside of the like books and stuff that it frustrates her, even like it frustrated her that Larry didn't put more emphasis on his health, because then he ended up dying from things like complications from things that I think like diabetes and things that if he would have made it a priority, he could have lived a much longer life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, just an interesting kind of subplot here. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit, Rod, and let's talk about investing in wellness related industries specifically. And this was something that I had to like kind of think about and learn about. Like it wasn't something that just naturally came to me. And I was thinking, you know what, I want to invest in like health and wellness. Although I say that, and it's kind of funny because we owned a day spa previously. So like we were kind of in the we were in the wellness industry. And certainly there's, you know, huge opportunity, but let's just talk about opportunities or our thoughts around investing in health and wellness, starting with biohacking and preventative healthcare. Rod, what do you like, dislike, or just what are your thoughts around investing in those things, and maybe make sure that people know what biohacking is?
Yeah. Okay, so biohacking is basically just broadly described strategies that people use to be more healthy, create more longevity. And it can be across the board. It can be sleep related, supplements, just our diet, what we eat, exercise, like all of those different things. And even like I've sat in on some presentations where they talked about not just sleep in terms of amount of sleep, but when you sleep, when you wake up, the first thing you do, like one of the things.
Yeah, it's like sleep hacking.
Yeah. And like the biorhythms and things like that, so that when you wake up, the sooner you can have the sun hit your retina, the better.
Oh, interesting.
Right? And so having that, again, not just amount of sleep, but the timing of when
the quality, when
all of that
all
kind
those
of
things.
thing. So
yeah, super interesting.
Yeah.
And
so that's biohacking.
Okay.
Yeah. And so now there are obviously question marks on some of these things. Like you see an ad on Facebook or something and you hear the whole spiel and you're like, can this really, do this for me? And so what we've seen groups that have more like complete packages around longevity, around biohacking, because as with just betting, like with a financial strategy, right? You don't choose just one thing and say, yeah, this by itself is going to take me to the promised land. You build a complete strategy around it. And so So again, be interested, be careful in how you carry it out. But the point is that, yes, there have been a ton of developments, a lot of research around these things to show definitively that certain things are going to help us stay more healthy, have more longevity, and again, a lot more research to be done. But paying attention to those things and having a chance to invest in them could be a huge thing.
Okay, so here's my thoughts around this, Rod. Just like any new, well, I don't know if new is the right word, any popular trendy sector, things that are coming out, I think the same thing with AI. Most of what's likely to happen now, I believe, one, that this sector will continue to grow massively. And so like the opportunity to invest in it is absolutely there, just like AI. But I also believe that, there 99 out of 100 apps that are created around biohacking aren't going to pan out. Right. So like the way that I invest, like it's a really difficult thing, but I kind of feel like the best way to do it is to try to focus on the people rather than the product, like the person, the track record, that kind of thing. Now, obviously, if you know that and there's just like, you can't get behind the product, there's a challenge there. But my point is just to say, like, I believe in the idea, like I believe in investing in biohacking and preventative healthcare. Now, obviously, we're not talking on a personal level. Certainly on a personal level, I believe that. But as like from a money investment, like for, with the expectation of growth of companies, I think it's going to be hard to find the winners. But kind of the nature of venture capital. And so you again, like have to decide if this is the kind of framework I'm willing to go through. But the nature of venture capital is that they invest in a bunch of different things, and maybe one or two of those things hit and they hit big, and that pulls the return for all of the things that don't hit. Right. So if you're in, especially like if you're in venture capital and like the tech space and that kind of stuff, that's absolutely what's happening. And really everything's the tech space now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
So like biohacking and like that's absolutely intertwined with what was I just saying? With the tech. Thank you. Okay. So that's my thoughts on biohacking. I love the idea. I don't have good recommendations as far as how to do it, other than to say that if you're going to invest in these types of, up and coming companies, I would probably spread out my risk among several that I feel good about rather than going all in on a singular one. And hopefully I don't say that and somebody's like, calls me furious in 2 years from now. And they're like, if I would have put all my money in this one. Anyway, that's how I would go about it personally. But again, I'm not giving personal financial advice on this podcast. Okay, Rod. Talk about the next one. Fitness, tech, wearables, things like, actually, this is the same thing. Like all of these are going to be, from a philosophical standpoint, these are going to be the exact same. However, they are just kind of different sectors that we can invest in. So biohacking and preventative healthcare is great. The next one that is going to be huge is huge now, fitness tech. And I was like, fitness tech, what does that really mean? And I was like, oh, I'm probably wearing fitness tech. I've got my Apple Watch on, you know what I mean? And I use it to, check out. I do more than just check out my steps. Like you can get into some interesting details about fitness there. And of course, these types of tools, I don't know what you'd call them, doohickeys. Let's call them doohickeys. Right? These types of doohickeys are becoming way more prominent, and like the technology in it is incredible. Like I just think back 10 years or 20 years and think about like, if you told me this could happen at this point in time, I'd probably be like, that's crazy, right? Like how would that even be possible? And then, tech just moves so fast. Innovation just moves so fast that you almost don't even realize how much has happened in a short period of time. Okay. I'm done philosophizing. Is that the right word? Philosophizing?
Sure. Yeah.
That doesn't feel right, but hopefully it works.
Yeah. So, and my thought on that one is we often talk about investing in areas that you use, that you like and can be passionate about. And this is, I think, a good example of that, where most people are probably using some sort of wearable and or other technology around that. And so like, man, if you get excited about it and you like it and you feel like it's something that can be valuable for a lot of other people, and so your investment helps facilitate that continuing to develop and move into the next generation of whatever the technology is going, then those can be exciting things to invest in.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so there's also the mental health world, which again, all of these things are just becoming so much more prominent on our minds, like for better or for worse. Sometimes it's for better, sometimes it's for worse. I was thinking, again, I'm getting into philosophy mode here, but I was thinking about my kids, right? And just my life growing up. And I don't think I learned the word like anxiety or depression until I was like a little bit older. Like those weren't really in my repertoire. Now, I happen to be able to look back and see those characteristics in myself well before I knew what it was. But sometimes I'm like, oh, is it good that kids get exposed to like all of this information that they can, and it's kind of a double-edged sword at times, right? So sometimes I think it can be really valuable and they can become more educated. And then sometimes it can like, put more stress and anxiety on their minds, just being worried about that element. Yeah. And it's just a bizarre thing. So I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's definitely something that's just like been on my mind and stays there because of all of that movement.
Yeah. But I really am grateful for the development that has been made on the mental side, because, seeing loved ones struggle and whatnot, and then having it be more of a mainstream topic of conversation and strategic movements toward addressing it for people is hugely valuable. Because like,
okay.
Go ahead. What's funny is like when you were saying that about like we didn't used to talk about it in the same way, and I think about the ways that we used to talk about it, and you talk about like, oh, they're stressed out, or they're whatever. Those are terms that we would use, and yet what did that mean? It didn't really mean much at all. Like it could have meant anything from, oh, I was just overwhelmed at the moment, to completely overwhelmed with anxiety and I can't function because of that. But because we're, I think, more open about it now, more knowledgeable about it, we can be a little more specific in how we're talking about it and how we're addressing it, so that we can really get to the heart of our ability to address it.
Yeah, I love that. I think this is a really great point. I'm going to tell a quick story because this was something that was personal and helped me. And I've always been pretty open. Like people that listen to the podcast know I oftentimes say I'm anxious, but I'll even say it more clearly. I have an anxiety disorder that I have dealt with for my entire life, right? So I understand pretty intimately what that world looks like. And gratefully, I haven't really that hasn't really moved over in my world to the depression side, but I know what anxiety feels like, right? So, so this kind of concept of, investing in mental health and making it more of a talking point is really valuable. So I got the courage to just be really open about this. I would say like the maybe watershed moment that I can think back on is it was called Lily. It stood for Leadership in Life Insurance. So it was something like, it was specifically something that the life insurance industry was doing around leadership, right? And it was this kind of coursework, but the moderator, who was one of my kind of, friends and mentors over the years, Jerry Barman, who's actually been on the podcast a couple of times. Jerry, I had never heard him talk about it, but he was just very open with the group about his and just clearly said, like, I've dealt with this, this anxiety disorder my whole life. And this was someone that was that's revered, has been revered in our industry.
Icon.
He's somebody that, especially in our area, just like everybody knows and loves Jerry. He's just had an incredible career. You would never know it. You would have no idea that that's part of his world when you talk to him and you see him speak in public and all those things. And so anyway, for me, that was really helpful to be able to feel like, hey, I don't have to feel embarrassed about that part of me. I can still be incredibly successful and do these things regardless of that. So anyway, I know I'm getting off into a bunch of stuff, but I'll just say I absolutely love that this is more of an open conversation and that there's people I think about in the NBA, I'm trying to think of his name. He played for the Toronto Raptors. Then he played for he was most recently, he got traded from the Chicago Bulls to the Sacramento Kings. I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, yeah, you're not helping, but you would know his name. He's a really good scorer. He scores like 25 points a game. It's just not coming. A little bit older. Nothing still, Rod?
No.
Can I come up with it? Okay. Anyway, he was like one of the first people in the NBA to start having this conversation about his mental health. Right. And point is, I really love it. One of the things that I think it does is it does escalate, like it moves forward the trend or the ability to invest in mental health because of the openness of like what's happening in the community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you find it for me?
DeMar DeRozan?
Yes, thank you. It's DeMar. I was like, why can't I come up with this? Driving me nuts. And there's probably at least a few people who are like, he's talking about DeMar DeRozan. But anyway. Okay, Rod, let's this last one. This one's interesting. I want to just hit on it really quick because I hadn't really thought about it, but it's wellness real estate. So apparently there's a rise in developments that are focused specifically on wellness centric living. And I had heard of like long-term care, like those kinds of stuff. Those became really popular to types of things to invest and build. But I hadn't really thought about it like beyond that. And so they gave I got an example of Delos Living, which promotes environments with air and water filtration systems and a bunch of other things that basically are for health conscious people. And that's like, again, because people have become so health conscious, it allows innovators the opportunity to create things that will move that cause forward. And so from an investment perspective, there's opportunities even in things like that I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. And one of the ones that made the list here, Circadian Lighting, is something that I've been fascinated by. It's shown up a couple of times in Shark Tank. As you know, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
And kind of cool to see. And then, I have a sister who was living in Alaska for several years. We'll probably end up going back.
Okay. I don't know what this lighting is, Rod. So just tell me first.
Yeah. So circadian lighting, it's our bodies respond to daylight, to sunlight. Okay. And if you don't have it, then you are more susceptible to depression and just generally.
That makes total sense to me. I feel better when I'm out and when I get out in the sun.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So my sister got a circadian light, basically just a way to replace daylight when they didn't have it in Alaska over the winter.
Okay.
And
that's cool.
And my son has had a similar kind of thing where he's had battles with, depression or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so he uses one of these. And again, it's very cool in our case where it's mostly in the winter where it's more needed just because you're replacing that daylight. And so, but anyway, kind of from a wellness standpoint.
Yeah,
cool.
I love it. I think it's super cool. Okay, let's switch gears again and let's talk about how, and again, we'll go through this quick because most people here, I think, will kind of know these primary points, but let's talk about how, as high income earners, we can actually leverage health and, make sure that we're getting the best of both worlds, which is, of course, what we're looking for. So pretty simple. Prioritizing wellness spending is one of those things that in the past or at the early stages of this wellness trend, I think a lot of people were like, oh, they waste money on these healthy foods. And you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think people more and more are seeing that I'm actually investing in myself. Now, you can go and spend money on a lot of things that aren't what you think they are, but that's a different conversation. I think the broader idea, Rod, of just prioritizing, spending things that help create wellness, again, it makes sense for a lot of reasons. Not only being that I just feel better in the moment, but also because it literally will help us, back to our earlier points, be more productive and then be able to create more again. So it's again, this circular thing that happens where we invest in wellness, that investing in that wellness allows us to be more productive, we then can produce more wealth, and round we go.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with a physician, and it was focused on this kind of well-rounded health, holistic health kind of stuff. And I mentioned just that we do a lot of yard work and things like that. And the comment that he came back with was like, oh man, I would much rather see someone who's just has an active lifestyle in the way that I was describing it than the people who just feel like they have to go to the gym and, pump weights and do all this kind of thing. And again, I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't be out doing that, but the point was, and the point he was making was that he had seen people like overstrain themselves, create kind of, in some cases, an unhealthy level of just basically damage to their body by trying to go too far to the extreme and just, again, making it more about just one element of exercise in this case, instead of having a more well-rounded approach to it. And again, I think people understand that better today than maybe they did 20 years ago. But the point is that when we talk about this whole idea of prioritizing our wellness spending and have like creating a plan to approach it, I think it's just making it well-rounded and investing in education about it alongside it, similar to what we talk about on the financial side, right? Investing in education can be a huge thing in terms of accomplishing this.
All right. Really quick, creating a wellness plan alongside a financial plan. Again, this is like one of those things that I hadn't really thought about, like creating a defined wellness plan, but I certainly believe in being deliberate, right? And so if you're somebody that makes plans like that, and I make business plans a lot, like I do, but anyway, I haven't done it. I don't even personally have like a written out full-blown financial plan, just because that's not the way that I, function. That it's not that useful for me. I certainly have it very well defined and it's very deliberate, but it's not. So the idea of creating a plan for wellness, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I started to like put it together, and I was really enjoying the process of saying, okay, here's what I'm doing now. And then, sometimes there's just like an epiphany that comes or clarity that can come when you get it down on paper. You're looking at it, you're seeing an actual plan, and, you can see where the holes are, where the things that look really good are, and hopefully make the right types of adjustments. So anyway, that's been fun for me. I would recommend going ahead, if you haven't before, and creating a wellness plan. Like, again, how I can be the healthiest person I want to be, and how that like intertwines with my lifestyle and my income and money. All of those things are important. Okay. I like the idea, Rod. I'm going to commit you. Will you create a wellness plan to go along with your financial plan?
Yeah, I think I will.
All right.
All right. I shouldn't say I think I will. I'll do it.
You will. Okay. I like it. Sweet. Okay. And finally, let's just have a little fun here. We're going to talk about a couple of examples of people, very high profile people who have made an emphasis or made health and wellness a huge emphasis in their lives, and kind of what they've talked about. Okay. So the first example, and by the way, these came straight from ChatGPT. So, I just love AI, Rod. I love AI. It's like my best friend. It's so much easier to create like good content. And what's really cool about AI now, like that they didn't even have a year ago, many months ago, but like it can learn your voice and learn your style. And so like if you create the inputs, and then ask for the outputs. But again, if you build it to understand your dynamic and like the way it's just so crazy, so cool. Anyway, long story short, for whatever reason, Jarvis, that's what I call ChatGPT, Jarvis went ahead and gave me these 3 examples. So we're going to hit on them. The first one is Richard Branson. Do you know Richard Branson?
I do.
Okay. So founder of the Virgin Group, he attributes much of his business success to his fitness routine. I've never like listened to a lot of Richard Branson, if I'm being honest. I know his name, like I know what he's done, and like I know a little bit, but I've not like, engaged in a ton of his stuff. So I don't know like about, but apparently he is very much on the side of, by being healthy, like that was a big part of allowing him to find the success and the other areas of, business that he has. And obviously he's, been really successful doing it. What do you think?
So where I've seen him is on Shark Tank. He was a guest investor and he just, he clearly is fit, and they strategically aligned some of the opportunities coming in the door around these kinds of, in his case, kind of like extreme sports.
Yeah.
And so it was fun to see him get all excited about it. And he is definitely fit. And I don't know how old he is, but if I had to guess, I would say at least 70, but he looks like really,
that's amazing.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Crazy. Okay. Well, we can learn a little bit from Richard Branson and make sure that we're buckling down on our health. Okay. Jeff Bezos, he apparently stepped down from being, now this isn't news, let's be really clear. So when I say apparently, he stepped down as the CEO of Amazon with the idea of making his health a priority. And I don't know anything beyond that, but apparently that's what happened. And so we're going to learn that even the wealthiest people in the world are making, like, there's a huge focus on health. And actually, this isn't surprising, right? Like, they have the most resources. Like, so oftentimes they're thinking like, hey, how can I like overcome like the most difficult challenges that life has to offer? For example, living longer, So it doesn't surprise me that someone with his kind of wealth would be interested in living as long as possible. But we can learn something from Jeff Bezos. And then my last one, Rod, is the most notorious, at least for me, because I'm an NBA guy, but we all know LeBron is notorious, famous for investing in his body. It says here that he invests about $1.5 million on body maintenance. And can I just tell you, I thought about that. Like when I hear that number, I'm like, oh, that's a lot of money on body maintenance. But then I was like, well, like his body's his business, right? Yeah. Like when you think of it in those terms, like I invest a good chunk of money in marketing and branding and building. Like, why wouldn't somebody invest in the thing that creates them money? So like, can I just say maybe he's a pioneer in like that, in the idea behind that? I would say that I would be surprised if there wasn't other people who did it, but like he's kind of pioneered the idea that this is really should be a priority and a focus. But can I just say like, kind of like, duh, yes, absolutely. You should spend money on the thing that's creating you massive wealth. When you're making $60-70 million a year, then, that's like chump change.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll throw a few nickels at it.
Yeah. And it's paid off. So one of the things that has always
he's incredible.
Interesting to me is you think about just a couple of the players that did really well from his same draft, and they've been out of the NBA for, I don't know, a long time. 7, 8, maybe 10 years. Dwayne Wade, when did he retire?
He hasn't been that long. He's probably like 3-4 years back that he was still playing. But he played till he was like 35. Carmelo's been,
played longer, but
like those guys were like down. Okay, your point is just well taken. He has been better, like probably 5 years longer than anyone else in his draft. And again, if you think about like the level that the dude's kept up for his entire, like, we're not breaking news here, but hey, everybody, LeBron's incredible. Shocker, right? In case anyone didn't know, it's amazing that he's 40 years old and he's playing, better than 97% of the NBA. I don't know, man. It's wild. I don't know. He's apparently going to defy age and time, at least for the foreseeable future. So anyway, we just thought we'd have fun with it there at the end. But I like the topic, right? Like maybe it would be really useful to get someone who has like a lot of expertise in longevity to have this conversation in more detail. Because I bet that there's like a lot of studies that have been done on the connection of health and wealth and health. And, you know, in my head, I'm already kind of planning out like, hey, who's the right person to do that with? But for today, Rod, I like just making it a priority in my own life. And so I thought it was worth having a conversation about. And you guys can like send us like nasty emails if you're like, guys, just stay in your lane. Money is your thing. Stay away from health and those kind of things. But if you thought it was decent and had fun with the interesting conversation, like let us know that too. That'd be awesome. Okay, Rod, any final or closing thoughts before we kick it?
I'm excited to put together my health plan.
Okay, nice. I'm going to follow up with you on this. Okay, thanks everybody for hanging out with us today. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights Podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights Podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth-building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.